the obvious route to energy independence that we have right now is not really a solar panel because they don't work at night, and they're really not going to get any more efficient than they are right now, regardless of what you read. And every time I see another article by another university struggling for a grant with a solar panel that's 78% efficient using materials you can only get at the International Space Station or the backside of the moon, you're stuck with what you've got, which means it's a real estate issue. You're slapping silicon all over buildings, and now you've got a lot of, unfortunately, where a lot of them are made over in China. There's a lot of coal factories that are constantly producing these things. So the amount of coal being made and mined and produced to make solar panels sort of offsets the greening of it. But what we've got is heat. We've got a planet, and when we run out of that, your problems are all over. You don't have to worry about anything anymore if it actually gets that cold. So we have enough ambient heat in the ground and in the air to drive everything. Now here's a weird one that really kind of struck with me in 2007 after QGT, when I was building these things with these groups over in the Midwest. MIT did a study. It was a $10 million study by the Department of Energy. And it was kind of circulated a little bit, but it didn't get a front page. And they determined that the United States has enough low temperature geothermal power to power itself for the better part of 1 million years. Right now, with what we have, with less than $1 billion of required
that headline went right under the radar. There's a shocker.
All gone. Now, here's where it got even funnier. Canada went, okay, hold my beer. We got
shit.
So Canada did their own study 2 years later and said, whoa, we've got enough geothermal, low temp geothermal power, which means not quite boiling, but almost boiling, to power cells for the next 14,000 years. So there was enough energy between the United States and Canada with just low temp geothermal to power both countries for less than $1 billion of infrastructure costs. We'd be done. That was it. And that was an MIT study.
I fail to, like, I don't understand. How does that not then become,
policy?
How does it, I mean, look, I know that obviously there are huge players and there's an industry that is, clinging to life and trying to remain, a part of
relevant.
What's happening. And there's some powerful people in these industries, and we know what they're capable of. There's a reason why we're still blasting off into space with billows of smoke. And I watched that. There was a takeoff during the quarantine, and I watched it with my kids, and I was like, you see that spaceship, kids? I was like, that's like, when you're watching that, it's like looking at an old railroad when the train used to go choo-choo and had the things, and you're looking at an antique. I was like, that's all for show. That's a distraction right now. And you see how there's nothing to do and we're all stuck inside?
That's right. There's better
and they were laughing watching that. I was like, you see all that smoke? We don't need anything. They were like, wow.
It's true.
Crazy, man.
So there's a combination of things after being in this industry for years, kind of promoting and funding and developing. There's a few trends. One is science sort of follows a trend in funding. So you're only going to get what the capital investment groups can understand and what they're willing to risk on. So they're willing to risk things like wind in areas where it's not very capable, because it's it's okay to lose money on something that everybody else is betting on, because you could still get paid for it. You can still put the financing through on it. It'd be nice to get a return on it, but it's an acceptable loss if everybody else was doing it. If you're the first guy powering a house with water, you're not going to get a lot of investment groups to get in there, because nobody wants the headline of you're the guy who put $20 million on the house that was powered by a self-generating hydrogen reactor, right? Yeah. Nobody wants that headline if it doesn't work. Everybody will be everybody's going to be a self-proclaimed prophet if it does. So what I've noticed, here's a good example. So I was really on the hydrogen wave very heavily in the early 2000s, from about 2001 till about 2007. Then Wall Street decided that was boring. Hydrogen was no longer viable. The Fed stopped giving incentives for it, and suddenly hydrogen didn't work anymore. It worked fine for the better part of 150 years, but it stopped working around 2007. Then about a year and a half ago, a couple of governments were taking some of the papers that were filed in 2008 and started flashing them around to their science divisions. And these science advisors would go to their energy ministers and say, we should do hydrogen. It's great. It's the next economy. Let's get all the cars switched over to it. So then you don't see it happen again. What happens is it trends up, and all these investment groups come forward. They start packaging again. You're going to see a big flurry of hydrogen things that don't quite come to fruition. You've got Toyota with their little hydrogen car, but in order to get it fueled, you got to go to one of the 72 free hydrogen fueling stations in California that ends in San Francisco, doesn't go to Nevada. As long as you want to drive in this small cube, you can have your hydrogen car. And I get the PR value of it, but we have better sciences out there. We have for a long time. Graphene is not new. We've had graphene for quite a while now. $1 billion invested into graphene would get us way over the top in terms of energy storage for batteries, energy on demand for energy collection from ambient power. You can dope graphene with some.
What's graphene for people who don't know what that is?
Sure. Graphene is basically it's a carbon molecule. Basically, it's everything that this universe is made of, but it's paper thin. It's atom thin. And when you stack this stuff, it has these really exotic properties, like it's superconductive, which means it almost takes electricity and just runs it through without getting hot. So if you had a superconductive car or wire in your house, when you had a lot of power going through it, it would always be cold. It would never be hot. It wouldn't catch fire. So it's very superconductive. You can make it so that it can act as a sieve for seawater when you design it correctly. So it keeps salt out. It lets water through. It's fantastic for making clothes, and you can actually stack it up very thick to make exotic materials with it. So what you're doing is you're taking the most common building block in the known universe, which is carbon, and you're stringing it really thin into a very thin material, and you're stacking it and just doing exotic things with it. And it's the super material of the future. You can eventually build houses with it. You can build clothes with it. So right now they're looking towards doing like graphene solar panels. And the reason they're doing something like that is you can tweak it because it's such a thin carbon. You can do things with it so it's more susceptible to receiving electrons in the environment, more susceptible to receiving certain wavelengths of light in the environment, because you're tweaking things at an atomic level. It's just a wonderful material to do things with. And it's the kind of thing where you'd wonder, why aren't there graphene universities? Right. Why aren't there $3 billion industries just concentrating on just getting rid of nuclear energy right now and fossil fuels and just supplementing it with graphene technologies? And so what I'm finding is that there are small groups investing into it. King's College over in London was, I think, the co-inventor of it. It's being licensed out to these other groups that have got a few $100 million and $1 billion into it. It should be an economy. It shouldn't be a science project at this point, because we understand the benefits of it. Anyway, that's my graphene pitch.
It makes me think about hemp and the fact that we're still cutting down trees to.
Right, exactly.
It's like, why? Why are we still doing that?
The argument's over, man. You can mine this stuff. You can liquefy this stuff. You can turn it into paper. It becomes clothes. You can make building blocks with it. You can make rebar with this stuff. It's no longer can you. It's why aren't you?
Yeah, with so many things, it's why aren't you?